Today's story is about a guy who spent 5 years being someone's financial safety net, emotional anchor, and on-call vacation planner, all rolled into one. He booked a 2-week beach resort trip, dropped a $2,000 non-refundable deposit straight out of his savings, and then his girlfriend dumped him, admitted she'd been cheating, and casually assumed she was still going on that trip. As friends, obviously. What he did with those tickets is exactly why you're here today. Grab whatever you've got and settle in, because this one builds slowly and pays off beautifully. Let's get into it. We're better as friends, honestly, she assured me, so I agreed. Then she discovered friendship didn't include me covering her half of the vacation, especially not when I took someone else instead. My name's Alex and I'm 34. I work as an operations manager at a mid-sized consulting firm. Decent pay, steady work, the kind of job that doesn't make for exciting conversation at parties, but keeps the lights on and the savings account growing. I'm a planner by nature. I like order, I like reliability, and I've always believed that being the stable one in a relationship is a feature, not a flaw. That belief was about to get stress tested in a serious way. I met Jenna in college. She was a graphic design major with this electric, restless kind of energy. The type of person who had 4 plans going at once, and somehow made all of them sound like the most interesting thing in the world. She walked into a room and immediately became the center of it. Big laugh, big ideas, big dreams she talked about like they were already halfway done. I was completely hooked from the moment I met her, and I stayed hooked for longer than was probably good for me. We graduated and moved into a downtown apartment together. Nothing fancy, small kitchen, 1 bedroom, a view of the parking structure across the street, but it felt like the right kind of start. I went into it fully committed to making it work, which in practical terms meant being the one who held things steady while she built something of her own. Jenna was freelancing as a graphic designer. Building a client base from scratch is unpredictable work, and her income reflected that completely. Some months she'd land a big project and feel on top of the world. Other months she'd be picking up waitressing shifts and stress-eating cereal for dinner. I didn't resent her for the inconsistency. I understood it. I picked up the slack without making it a thing, paid most of the rent and utilities, helped her put together a professional website and portfolio, worked overtime when she needed software or industry events she couldn't afford. I told her we were a team. Your success is our success. I meant every word of it. There's one night I think about more than any other from those early years. About 2 years into living together, she lost her biggest client without any warning. A long-term contract just evaporated. Bills were stacking, and she had nothing lined up. I came home after a 12-hour shift, still in my work clothes, and found her sitting on the couch in the dark. No TV, no music, just sitting there staring at nothing, looking completely hollowed out in a way that made my chest tighten the second I saw her. I didn't ask what happened. I sat down beside her, held her, and told her we'd figure it out together. That night, after she fell asleep, I transferred money from my personal emergency savings into our joint account to cover her share of the rent. She hadn't asked me to do it. She didn't even know until the next morning when she checked the balance. She wrapped her arms around me and called me her rock. Said she'd pay me back as soon as things picked up. That became the pattern. Her inconsistency, my backup fund, her promise to eventually square things up. I accepted it because I genuinely believed we were building towards something together. And in fairness, her work did pick up during certain stretches. There were periods of real momentum where she was booking clients consistently and feeling good about where things were heading. Those stretches made the harder ones feel worth it. Another memory that's been sitting with me since all of this ended, about 3.5 years in, she wanted to quit her waitressing shifts entirely and go fully freelance. She was terrified to do it without a financial cushion she didn't have. I told her I'd cover us for a few months while she built momentum. I dipped into my emergency fund for the second time, covered groceries and utilities, and her share of the rent while she pushed the freelance business forward. She made it work, landed 2 solid ongoing clients, and stopped worrying about the side income within about 4 months. She was so relieved, so grateful. Told me she couldn't have done it without me. I went to sleep that night feeling like I'd done something genuinely meaningful. Looking back now, I just funded the stability that let her grow comfortable enough to eventually decide I was boring. We talked about the future constantly. Marriage someday, a house when it made financial sense, what kind of life we wanted to build together down the road. I wasn't in a rush. I was just fully in it. The way you are when you've decided someone is your person and you've stopped questioning it. Looking back now with a clear head, I was carrying about 80% of the weight and calling it partnership. That's not entirely on her. I let that dynamic develop over years without ever naming it for what it was. About a year ago, she started talking about burning out. The freelance hustle had been grinding her down and she needed a real reset. "Let's plan something big," she said. "Something we've been saying we'd do since college but never actually pulled the trigger on." So I made it happen. I found a 2-week resort package at a beach destination that was genuinely stunning. White sand, blue water, the kind of place that looks like something out of a travel magazine. I put down the $2,000 non-refundable deposit from my savings, fully expecting she'd cover her half when her next client payment came in. The remaining balance wasn't due for several months. We had time. She was completely thrilled. Lit up like I hadn't seen in a while. Posted about the trip on social media that same day. The destination, the resort, heart emojis, the whole production. She wrote something like, "Can't wait to make memories with my favorite person." I remember smiling when I saw it. I was just happy she was happy. That happiness didn't last long. Hold on. Let me step in here. This is me, not the story. Before we move forward, I need you to clock something. This man pulled from his own emergency fund to cover her rent when she didn't even ask. He worked overtime so she could go to networking events. And now he's dropped $2,000 on a vacation she's barely contributing to. She's posting heart emojis online. He's balancing a spreadsheet. That's not a partnership. That's a sponsorship with a girlfriend title attached. And you know what she calls him later? Boring. No spark, no passion. We'll get there. Stay with me. Around the same time I booked the trip, something in the apartment started feeling different. It's hard to describe because it wasn't dramatic or sudden, more like a slow temperature drop, the kind you don't notice until you're already cold. Jenna started coming home later from work. Not by hours at first, just 30 or 40 minutes, then gradually more over time. Her phone was always face down on the counter when I walked into the kitchen. She'd be smiling at the screen and typing quickly, and the moment I got close, she'd set it down and change the subject. I told myself it was work stuff, a new client, a group chat with her design community, something that didn't involve me. I trusted her. I'd never had a reason not to. She started reposting things online that I noticed but didn't comment on. Quotes about craving adventure, memes about outgrowing comfortable routines, posts about needing someone who keeps life interesting. I'd see them scroll past in my feed and feel this low-grade unease I couldn't quite locate. But I kept talking myself out of it. People post random things. It doesn't mean anything. Then came the mentions of Mark, a coworker of hers. Musician on the side, guitarist in some local band that played underground shows. She brought him up the way you'd mention anyone from work. Casually, in passing, like he was a completely normal thing to talk about. He'd planned a last-minute road trip and just went. Got backstage passes to some show through a contact. Always doing something, always in the middle of some project. She'd laugh when she talked about him. This easy, light laugh that I hadn't heard her use about anything involving me in a while. I noticed. I didn't say anything. She started canceling things I'd planned for us. A dinner reservation she'd been looking forward to, she'd text an hour before to say she was staying late with friends. A movie night at home, she'd cut it short and go to bed early. A weekend picnic I'd organized specifically because she said she wanted to get outside more. She rescheduled twice and then stopped mentioning it entirely. Our intimacy dried up over the course of a few months. She said she was tired, stressed about work. I gave her space because that felt like the right thing to do when someone says they need it. But the distance didn't shrink. If anything, it grew. There were evenings when I'd come home, cook dinner, put it on the table, and she'd eat with her phone beside her plate like I was background noise. I'd try to start a conversation and get one-word answers. Then she'd disappear into the bedroom saying she needed to unwind. I'd sit there at the table thinking about what I'd done wrong and coming up empty. I hadn't changed. I was exactly who I'd been for 5 years. That somehow made it worse. Privately, I was starting to question everything. Was I too stable? Too focused on building something steady when what she wanted was unpredictable? I started second-guessing qualities I'd always considered strengths. The planning, the consistency, the way I worked hard to make our life reliable and solid. I suggested we shake things up, maybe book a spontaneous weekend trip somewhere neither of us had been. She waved it off, said we were fine, said I was overthinking it. I was lying awake at 3 in the morning running through every possible explanation, so I'm not sure that qualifies as overthinking. But I stayed quiet. I'd turned down a promotion the previous year that would have required extended travel because I wanted to stay close to home. I'd pulled back on things I actually cared about. Photography, long trail hikes, a reading habit I'd dropped completely to keep my schedule open for us. I'd built my life around the assumption that this was where I was supposed to be, and now I was feeling it hollow out from the inside without understanding why. I kept telling myself it was a rough patch, that relationships go through these things and come out the other side. It wasn't a rough patch. The truth showed up on a Tuesday night in early fall. I got home earlier than usual and stopped at her favorite Thai place on the way. Same order we'd been doing since our first year together. I set the table, lit a candle, and sat there for a few minutes just hoping that a quiet dinner was all we needed to close whatever gap had been growing between us. She walked in around 8. Eyes on her phone, purse still over her shoulder, didn't register the table set up at first. I said hey and asked how her day was. She set her bag on the couch and let out a long breath. Alex, we need to talk. I know what those words sound like when someone says them a certain way. My stomach dropped. I nodded and sat down. She paced for a moment, arms crossing and uncrossing, not making eye contact. Then she stopped, looked at me, and told me she'd been doing a lot of thinking about us. That she loved me but thought we were better as friends. That we'd grown apart, that she was craving something different, someone who could push her outside her comfort zone. I asked her calmly if there was someone else. She paused just long enough to answer before she opened her mouth. Then she nodded. Mark from work. They'd been spending time together, she said. Nothing serious yet, but he understood her in a way I didn't. He was spontaneous, always planning something, always alive. With me, she said, it was just work, home, repeat, same routine. She needed more than that. I pointed out that I had literally just booked a 2-week vacation specifically to break out of that routine. She rolled her eyes, said it wasn't really cheating because we'd basically been roommates for months anyway. Said she'd been hinting through those posts and I should have picked up on it sooner. Said I was too logical, too structured, too focused on planning and stability to ever make her feel truly excited. Mark had taken her to an underground show the previous weekend and it was incredible. I would have hated it. Too loud, too unplanned. She laughed a little when she said that. She reminded me of the one time I said skydiving sounded too risky. Said that was me, always playing it safe. Said she deserved someone who matched her energy. I sat there and let her keep going for a minute because at that point I was more curious than hurt. The full picture was assembling itself in real time. She went on about how Mark never overthought things, never needed a plan, never had a 5-step process for everything, which was apparently how she'd come to describe my general approach to life. She said she felt like she'd been living in a color-by-numbers painting for 2 years when what she wanted was something raw and unpredictable. She actually said color by numbers. I remember that specifically because the irony of it hit me a few days later. She'd spent the last 2 years posting carefully curated couple content on social media, complete with matching aesthetics and thoughtful captions. And now spontaneity was the brand she was trying on. I leaned back and took it all in. The betrayal was one thing. The way she was framing it, like my reliability was the reason she cheated, like being dependable was a character flaw she'd been patiently enduring. That part cut differently. She wasn't just ending the relationship. She was rewriting 5 years of it in the span of 10 minutes. She said we could stay friends. We had history. Didn't have to make it messy. Could still grab coffee here and there. And then, and I want you to really absorb this next part, she said we should still go on the vacation together, as friends. Said it would be awkward to cancel at this point. Said she'd pay me back her half eventually. I sat there looking at her for a long moment. Then I said, okay. She blinked. Like she expected me to fall apart, or argue, or beg her to reconsider. When I just sat there calm and said okay, she actually commented on it. Said this was exactly why things wouldn't work between us. No emotion, no fight. Mark would have argued because he actually cared. I told her I cared. I just wasn't going to beg. I got up and went to the bedroom and packed an overnight bag. When I walked back through the living room with my duffel and my keys, she was standing in the hallway with her arms crossed, almost looking disappointed that I wasn't going to give her a scene. She asked if I was really just leaving like that. I told her friends don't live together, grabbed my keys, and walked out. She stood in the hallway. The door closed behind me. I drove to my buddy Nate's place and crashed on his couch. Pause for a second, because I need to talk about what just happened. She cheated, told him to his face, explained in detail that it was because he was boring and a guy named Mark made her feel alive, and then asked if she could still go on the vacation he paid for, as friends. And his response was to say, okay, pack one bag, and walk out without raising his voice. No begging, no blow-up, no speech at the door. She stood in that hallway waiting for a scene and got complete silence. That composure is rarer than people think, and 100 times more effective than yelling. Keep going. It gets better. That first night at Nate's was rough. He had a pull-out couch that was about 3 inches too short for my legs, and I lay there staring at the ceiling replaying 5 years in a loop. Not just the conversation, all of it. The emergency fund transfers, the overtime shifts, the promotion I passed on, the photography gear sitting in a bag I hadn't touched in 2 years, the trail hikes I'd put off indefinitely, everything I'd quietly arranged around making our life work, stacked up in my head at once while I stared at a water stain and tried to process the fact that none of it had mattered in the end. She'd traded 5 years of that for a guy who took her to a loud show and called it spontaneous. But I didn't text her, didn't call, just let it sit. The unfairness was the hardest part to move through. She cheated, admitted it straight to my face, reframed the whole thing so I looked like the cause of it, and then asked about the vacation deposit in the same conversation. But I'd been around long enough to know that falling apart in the direction of someone who just disrespected you is the worst possible use of your energy. Nate was solid about the whole thing. He let me know that same night that she was showing her true colors and I deserved better, and he said it without making a production of it. He kept the coffee stocked and gave me the couch for as long as I needed without pressure. I took a few days off work to get my head straight, started running again. Real runs, hard ones, early in the morning before anyone else was out. The physical reset helped more than I expected. There's something about grinding through a 5-mile run at 6 in the morning that puts a pretty sharp edge on what actually matters and what doesn't. I went back to the gym and actually pushed myself, instead of going through the motions. I started writing things down at night, which felt slightly ridiculous, but helped more than I expected. Every red flag I'd explained away, every comparison she'd made, every vague post I'd convinced myself meant nothing, all of it out of my head and onto paper, where I could actually look at it clearly. The list got long faster than I thought it would. On the practical side, I moved quietly and without drama. Emailed the landlord about ending the lease early, kept the reason brief. Had utilities transferred out of my name. Went to the bank and withdrew my half of the joint account and closed it the same day. Found a 1-bedroom apartment within a few weeks. Fully mine, nothing shared, no joint, anything attached to it. The vacation deposit was gone. I knew that. Non-refundable meant non-refundable, and I wasn't going to lose sleep over $2,000 I'd already written off mentally. But the remaining balance wasn't due for a couple more months. And Jenna had never actually paid her half. Always the next paycheck. Always soon. I'll get you back. I didn't remind her. I just filed that fact away quietly. I unblocked her on one app to keep a line open in case anything came up related to the lease or the joint account. Practical stuff only. Otherwise, silence. I picked up my camera for the first time in close to 2 years. Started reading the sci-fi novels I'd been meaning to get to forever. Took a solo trail hike one Saturday morning that I'd wanted to do for ages, but had always put off because she wasn't into hiking. Standing on that trail with nothing around me but wind and distance and my own thoughts, I felt something start to loosen. It wasn't happiness exactly, more like the specific relief of realizing you've been carrying something heavy for a very long time, and you've only just noticed because you finally set it down. Work picked up around the same time. I poured the extra energy into a major project that had been sitting on the back burner for months, and my manager called me out in front of the whole team. Said I'd been on fire lately. That small moment of recognition, earned, not handed to me, not something I'd had to beg for, hit differently after years of looking for that same feeling in a place that kept dimming it. I started seeing someone. Nothing I planned, just naturally. I met a woman named Laura at a professional event, introduced through a mutual colleague. She was a teacher. Grounded, sharp, easy to be around. She laughed at my dry humor without making it weird. We got coffee a few times, no pressure or expectation on either end. It felt like finding parts of myself that had been quietly put in storage. The unfairness still surfaced sometimes at night, but I didn't live in it. I let the silence do its work. About a month after the breakup, the silence started talking back. Okay, time out. Let me set the table for what's coming. While this guy is out here running trails and quietly rebuilding everything, Captain Spontaneous is self-destructing in real time. The musician who was so exciting, always planning adventures, ghosted her inside of a month. Turns out spontaneous also means not planning to stick around. Apparently, it was a whole pattern with this guy. She wasn't the first. She'd also quit her part-time job expecting to travel with him. Now freelancing is her only income, and she's scaring off clients with dramatic posts online. This is what trading stability for vibes looks like on paper. I started hearing updates through mutual connections, not because I asked, just things that come up when people talk. Mark had ghosted her after a few weeks. Turned out he was seeing multiple women at the same time, which nobody in our circle was shocked by. A few people who knew him said it was standard behavior for him, that he had a whole pattern of this, and that Jenna wasn't the first woman who'd made a significant life change based on his interest only to watch him disappear. That information was not exactly comforting, but it did clarify some things. She'd walked away from her waitressing shifts right around the same time she got involved with him, expecting to travel and spend time together, which left freelancing as her only income exactly when she could least afford for it to be unstable. Then, she'd gone online during the fallout and started posting vague, dramatic content, rants about fake people, cryptic things about moving on, and recognizing who actually valued you. The kind of content that signals to potential clients that you're in the middle of a personal crisis. Professional image matters in freelance work. People don't hire someone whose public profile reads like a slow-motion spiral. Friends began quietly stepping back. Not a dramatic falling out, just the natural dispersal that happens when someone becomes consistently exhausting to be around. The first message came about 5 weeks after the breakup. I was between sets at the gym when I checked my phone and found a text from Jenna. Casual tone, like we were old friends who'd just fallen out of touch. Asked how I'd been. Said she missed chatting and that we should grab coffee sometime. And then, almost like a footnote at the end, she brought up the vacation deposit. Said she could Venmo me her half soon and we shouldn't let it go to waste. Not one word of apology. Not a single acknowledgement of what actually happened between us. Just a friendly check-in with a financial request tacked onto the end. I replied twice, told her there was no need, then told her to handle her own. She responded almost immediately, said I was being cold, said friends help each other out, said she couldn't afford to lose that money right now. I didn't answer. I blocked the number. A few days later, her mom called, left a voicemail. I recognized her voice immediately. She said Jenna had told her what happened, and that we were so good together, and that I should be the bigger person and reach out. She used the phrase, family sticks together, like Jenna and I had been family, or like calling yourself a close friend of an ex automatically enrolls you in the network. I deleted the voicemail without responding. Then Tina, Jenna's best friend, the type who had been enthusiastically enabling her drama for years, sent me a text. Said I was being cold, said Jenna was hurting, said the cheating quote-unquote just happened, and at least I should hear her out about the trip because she needed a break. I replied once, told her it wasn't my problem. Then I blocked Tina too. About a week after that, a call came in from an unfamiliar number while I was at my desk. I let it go to voicemail, almost deleted it without listening, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Jenna, new number, different voice than I'd heard in that apartment. Softer, cracking at the edges. She said, okay, I was right. She was wrong. Mark had turned out to be a jerk who used her and disappeared. She was sorry for how she'd ended things. She said she missed me. And then, in almost the same breath, she mentioned she was 3 weeks behind on rent and that freelancing wasn't paying, and she asked if I could help her out, as a friend. She'd pay me back. Promise. I didn't call back. Then she came to my office. I was heading out for lunch, stepping off the elevator, when I saw her standing in the lobby. She looked completely different from the confident, slightly smug woman who'd laughed at the Thai food going cold on the table. Frazzled. Tired in a way that sat in her face. Her hair wasn't done, her eyes were puffy, and she was watching the elevator bank like she wasn't sure what she was going to say the second she saw me. She rushed toward me the moment I walked out. I stopped, kept my face neutral and my voice flat, asked her what was going on. She said she was sorry. For all of it. The cheating. The way she'd handled the conversation. The things she'd said. Mark had turned out to be volatile. Things got bad before they ended. And now she was alone, broke, behind on rent. The friends she'd been venting to online had quietly stopped picking up. She looked at me like she was putting something together for the first time, and said I was always the one who actually showed up. She asked if we could try again, or at minimum, if she could come to me as a real friend when she needed support. I told her I was genuinely sorry about what happened with Mark. Then I told her the chapter was closed. Her expression shifted. The softness folded back, and something sharper moved in underneath it. She straightened up and said I owed her. After all those years she'd put up with my boring routine, she said. After sticking around that long, the least I could do was cover her half of the trip. There it was. I said friends don't cheat and then demand money. She snapped, called me petty, said Mark was right, I was spineless. No wonder she left. I turned around and said goodbye. She raised her voice, told me I'd regret this, told me I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. Security walked her out while I went back upstairs, heated up my lunch at the office microwave, and ate at my desk in complete peace. That encounter had the strange effect of closing something off inside me that had still been slightly open. Up until that moment, there had been a small part of me, the part that spent 5 years believing in her, the part that sat next to her in the dark when she lost her biggest client, that had been waiting for a version of her that was genuinely sorry. The office visit made it clear that version wasn't coming. She wasn't there to apologize. She was there because her backup plan had failed, and I was the next option on the list. Once I saw that clearly, there was nothing left to feel conflicted about. Wait, let me make sure this lands properly. She walked into his workplace, a building she knew because she'd been there during better times, showed up unannounced with a carefully arranged sob story, and the second he didn't reach for his wallet, she pivoted straight to, "You owe me for tolerating your boring routine." That's not remorse. That's a vending machine that ran out of product and started kicking you. The audacity of framing 5 years of being financially supported as a hardship she nobly endured. And this man stood there, said goodbye, went back upstairs, and ate lunch. Absolutely no notes. Carry on. The remaining vacation balance came due about 2 months after that. I paid it in full. For 2 people. Just not the 2 people it was originally booked for. By then, Laura and I had developed into something real. Not just occasional coffee, actual time together. Weekend hikes where neither of us checked our phones, long dinners that ran late, conversations that didn't have any hidden edges or subtle digs buried underneath them. She was easy to be around in a way I'd honestly forgotten was possible. She thought my planning instinct was useful, not a personality defect. She appreciated that I followed through on things. She had her own life, her own goals, her own sense of direction. And she wasn't looking for someone to prop her up financially or emotionally. She just wanted good company. When I brought up the trip one evening, told her the whole backstory, what it was originally supposed to be and what it had turned into, she just listened without making it a production. No drama, no overthinking it. When I asked if she wanted to come, she smiled. She said she'd love that. No conditions, no negotiation. No, I'll get you back eventually. Just straightforward excitement about going somewhere beautiful with someone she actually wanted to spend time with. We booked the flights, packed the bags, started counting down the days. The final scene played out at the airport on the morning we left. We were early, bags checked, coffees in hand, working our way toward the gate. I spotted Jenna before she saw me. She was standing near the check-in counters with a carry-on, alone, looking worn in a way that was hard to miss even from across the terminal. She wasn't dressed the way she used to dress when she wanted to make an impression. No effort in it. Just someone who looked like they'd been through a few hard months and hadn't quite landed yet. She must have seen something on social media or heard through someone in our old social circle that I was still going on the trip. I don't know exactly how she found out, but she was there. She locked eyes with me and came straight over. Laura felt the shift in the air before I said a word. She moved slightly closer without making anything of it. Jenna looked at Laura, then at me, asked if we could speak alone for a moment. I shook my head. She started again, slower. Said Mark had left her in real financial debt. Said she'd had to borrow money from her mom just to cover groceries. Said the friends she'd been venting to online had stopped answering. Then she looked at me with this expression like she was genuinely seeing something clearly for the first time. Said she'd been blind, said I was stable and kind, and she'd traded something real for something that turned out to be completely empty. Said she'd changed and wanted a chance to start over. And then she asked if she could come on the trip, as a friend. Said she'd sleep on the couch if she had to. Just needed the escape. There were a few people from our old social circle nearby, getting coffee before their gate. I'd noticed them when we came in. They were pretending not to watch. I said her name once. Kept my voice even. Told her the chapter was closed. Said I'd built something new. Better situation at work. Better people around me. The trip was mine and Laura's. She said we'd planned it together. That I couldn't just replace her. I reminded her that she replaced me first. Told me I was boring. No spark. No passion. She said it herself. Her face crumbled. She said she knew she was wrong. Said she was sorry. Said please don't leave her like this. I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not the guilt she was probably hoping for. Just a flat, complete nothing. The kind that only shows up after you've already moved through every other emotion and come out the other side. I told her her choices brought her to this point. Mine were taking me somewhere else. She reached out and grabbed my arm. Said after everything, I at least owed her a second chance. Laura touched my arm gently. Time to go, she said. I looked at Jenna one last time. The person standing in front of me didn't really resemble the woman I'd fallen for in college. That version of her had been ambitious and alive and full of possibility. This version was running on desperation and entitlement, and the belief that our history gave her a permanent claim on my patience. Those are two very different things, and I'd finally stopped confusing them. I told her to take care of herself. Told her not to contact me again. She called after us as we walked toward the gate that I'd be miserable, that Laura was a rebound, that I'd regret this. Every word landed somewhere behind me and just stayed there. One of the guys from our old circle, someone I hadn't spoken to in months, caught my eye as we passed. He gave me a slow nod, the kind that says everything without needing a single word attached to it. We boarded the plane. 2 weeks later, I was on a beach with good food in my hand and nothing pressing on my mind. I know Jenna eventually saw the photos because a mutual friend mentioned it in passing later. I didn't feel vindicated by that. Didn't feel much of anything about it, actually. The satisfaction I had was quiet and personal. The kind you don't need to announce to anyone or prove to anyone. It was just mine. 5 years. A lot of overtime, a lot of past promotions, a lot of emergency fund transfers I never asked for back. And all of it led to boarding a plane without her, landing somewhere beautiful, and feeling completely at ease with how every single piece of it played out. Don't mistake kindness for weakness. And don't let anyone call your stability boring for so long that you start to believe them. So Reddit, what would you have done at the airport? Would you have stopped and talked to her, or walked straight past without breaking stride? Drop it in the comments. Look, nobody's calling this guy perfect. He stayed too long, ignored flags that were pretty hard to miss by the end, and carried the weight of 2 people on one salary for years without naming what that dynamic actually was. But when it fell apart, he didn't beg. He didn't blow up. He handled the mess quietly, rebuilt something better, and took the trip he worked for with someone who genuinely wanted to be there. That's not revenge. That's just what happens when you stop explaining yourself to people who already decided you're boring. Drop your take in the comments and subscribe if you're not already here. The next story's worth showing up for.